5 years had passed since the day humanity learned they were alone in the universe. Dr. Kim Ji-won stood in her laboratory deep beneath the mountains of Korea, looking at pieces of alien technology that would change everything. The lab was bigger than a football field, filled with machines that hummed and sparked as human scientists worked to unlock secrets that the galaxy had tried to keep from them. The alien quarantine barriers surrounded Earth like an invisible cage, but they had left behind something precious. Scattered across human space were the remains of alien ships that had visited Earth over the centuries. Most people thought they were just scrap metal, but Dr. Kim Ji-won saw them as treasure. Each piece told a story about technology far beyond what humans had ever imagined. Working beside her was engineer Choi Dae-ho, a man who could build anything if you gave him the right parts. Together they had spent 3 years taking apart alien engines and trying to understand how they worked. The aliens used principles of physics that human scientists had never discovered, ways of bending space and time that seemed impossible. "Look at this," Ji-won said, pointing to a crystal that glowed with its own light. "This single piece contains more energy than our biggest nuclear power plant. The aliens use these crystals to power their ships, but they also use them for something else." Dae-ho leaned closer, studying the crystal through a special viewer. "The energy patterns are incredible," he said. "But there is something strange about how it works. It does not just store power. It creates power by doing something to space itself." That was the breakthrough they had been searching for. The aliens did not just travel through space, they changed space around them, making distances shorter and journeys faster. It was like folding a piece of paper so 2 distant points touched each other. Human scientists had dreamed of such technology but never imagined it was possible. News of their discovery spread quickly through the underground network of human researchers that had formed since the quarantine. Scientists, engineers, and inventors from every nation on Earth were working together, sharing information and resources in ways that had never happened before. The rejection by the aliens had done something unexpected. It had united humanity like nothing else ever could. President Yoon Hana called for an emergency meeting of the United Earth Assembly in the Great Hall in Geneva. Leaders from every nation sat together looking at holographic displays that showed the progress of human technology over the past 5 years. What they saw was incredible. In 5 years, humans had made advances that should have taken centuries. New engines based on alien technology could push ships faster than anything Earth had ever built. New materials stronger than anything found in nature could protect those ships from the dangers of space. New computers that thought like human brains could navigate through the galaxy without getting lost. But the most important discovery was not technological. It was about the galaxy itself. The few alien contacts that humans still had in secret told them terrible stories about life under the Galactic Empire. The Empire ruled not through wisdom and peace as they claimed, but through fear and control. Most species in the galaxy were slaves working in mines and factories to produce wealth for the older, more powerful races. Entire civilizations had been destroyed for refusing to obey the Empire. Billions of beings lived in poverty and fear, while the council members on Nexus Prime lived in luxury. President Yoon Hana stood before the assembly, her voice strong and determined. "The galaxy rejected us because they said we were too violent and primitive," she said. "But we have learned the truth. They rejected us because they were afraid of what we might become. They knew that if humans saw how they treated other species, we would never accept." She gestured to the holographic displays showing the new ships being built in orbit around Earth. These ships were different from anything the aliens had ever seen. They were sleek and black, like shadows moving through space, but they carried weapons that could punch through the strongest alien shields. "We will not beg for acceptance from beings who enslave entire worlds," President Yoon Hana continued. "We will build our own empire, but it will be different. Our empire will be built on freedom. Not slavery, on cooperation, not domination. We will liberate the oppressed and give them the choice to join us as equals." The assembly voted unanimously to form the Terran Federation with Earth as its capital and humanity as its first member species, but they would not remain alone for long. Intelligence reports from their secret contacts told them about resistance movements on dozens of worlds. beings who dreamed of freedom but lacked the power to achieve it. Commander An Jae-hyun led the first, secret missions beyond the quarantine barriers using new stealth technology that made human ships invisible to alien sensors. His reconnaissance teams were small and careful, moving like ghosts through alien space to gather information about potential allies on the mining world of Kepler. 442b Jae-hyun watched through binoculars as thousands of alien slaves worked in massive open-pit mines under the burning light of twin suns. The slaves belonged to a species called the Zilani, who looked almost human except for their blue skin and large eyes. They had once been explorers and artists, but the Empire had enslaved them centuries ago. The Zilani worked 18 hours a day with barely enough food to survive. Their children were taken away at birth to work in other parts of the Empire, and they never saw them again. Those who became too weak to work were simply abandoned to die. The Empire called this efficient resource management. But Jae-hyun also saw something else in the Zilani slaves. He saw defiance in their eyes and secret meetings in the darkness of their barracks. They had not given up hope. They still dreamed of freedom and passed down stories of their ancestors who had once traveled among the stars. Similar stories came from every world that human scouts visited. The galaxy was full of oppressed species who hated the Empire but had no way to fight back. They had been beaten down for so long that many had forgotten what freedom felt like. But the stories their grandparents told reminded them that things had not always been this way. Dr. Lim Yoonji made another crucial breakthrough in her communication laboratory. She developed translation technology that did not just convert words from one language to another, but shared emotions and cultural understanding between different species. For the first time, humans could truly understand what alien slaves were feeling and thinking. The tests were amazing. When humans and aliens used the new translation devices, they did not just hear each other speak, they felt each other's thoughts and emotions. A human could experience the deep sadness of a Zilani mother separated from her children. An alien could feel the burning anger of a human who learned about the Empire's cruelty. This technology would be crucial for building alliances between humans and the species they hoped to liberate. It was not enough to free slaves from their chains. They had to understand each other and trust each other if they were going to build something better together. As word spread through secret channels about human technology and intentions, more alien resistance groups began reaching out to Earth. They sent coded messages through the quantum networks that the Empire could not monitor, asking for help and offering information about weak points in Imperial defenses. The Empire began to notice strange activities in their outer territories. Ships disappeared from patrol routes. Mining operations reported technical failures that seemed too convenient to be accidents. Slave populations that had been quiet for centuries suddenly began showing signs of organization and hope. Emergency sessions were called on Nexus Prime as council members tried to understand what was happening. Some suspected the humans were behind the problems, but the quarantine barriers showed no signs of being breached. Human ships were still trapped in their solar system as far as Imperial sensors could detect. Council Speaker Vorthak stood before the emergency assembly, his red eyes glowing with anger. "Something is happening in our territories," he announced, "and I suspect the humans are involved, despite their supposed containment. We may have underestimated the threat they represent." Council voted to increase security around the quarantine zone and to begin preparing ancient weapon systems that had not been used for millions of years. They would show the humans, and any who dared to help them, what happened to those who challenged the Empire. But deep in the human laboratories on Earth, the scientists and engineers continued their work. They had learned to reverse engineer alien technology and improve upon it. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their determination stronger than ever. The stage was set for a conflict that would determine the future of the galaxy. On one side stood an ancient empire built on oppression and fear. On the other stood a young species that refused to accept that slavery and suffering were the natural order of things. The aliens had intended the quarantine to contain humanity, but instead they had given humans time to prepare for war. Admiral Song Tae-young stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmony, watching through the viewscreen as 30 black ships moved silently through space toward their target. The ships looked like shadows against the stars with smooth, curved hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each ship carried technology that the galaxy had never seen before, and crews that had trained for this moment for 3 years. The target was Mining Station Omega-7 on the planet Kepler 442b, where thousands of Zilani slaves worked day and night extracting rare minerals for the Galactic Empire. The station was protected by what the Empire considered an unbreakable defense grid, energy shields that could stop any known weapon sensor, arrays that could detect ships from millions of miles away, and automated defense platforms that fired deadly beams of concentrated plasma. But Admiral Song had something the Empire did not expect: human creativity and the willingness to try things that others called impossible. His ships did not carry the massive energy weapons that alien warships used. Instead, they carried devices that could turn the Empire's own technology against itself. "Prepare for insertion," the Admiral commanded, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. This would be humanity's first direct action against the Galactic Empire, and everything depended on succeeding without being detected. The human ships activated their stealth systems, becoming invisible to every type of sensor the Empire used. They moved closer to the mining station using gravitational fields to bend space around them, just as they had learned from studying alien technology. But where the aliens used this technology to travel faster, humans used it to become ghosts. Captain Nam Soyeon commanded the lead assault ship Freedom, carrying the most dangerous part of the mission. She and her team would have to get close enough to the defense grid to plant electromagnetic pulse devices that would shut down the station systems without destroying them. The goal was not to kill the alien guards, but to free the slaves and show the galaxy that there was another way. The mining station grew larger on their screens, a massive complex of metal buildings and towers built into the side of a mountain. The slave quarters were visible as long, low buildings where thousands of Zilani lived in conditions worse than prisons. On the surface, huge machines dug into the planet's crust, while tired alien workers operated them under the watchful eyes of armed guards. "Now," Captain Nam whispered into her communicator as her ship approached the first defense platform. The electromagnetic pulse devices activated, sending invisible waves of energy that scrambled every electronic system within miles. The defense platforms simply stopped working, their weapon systems shutting down as if someone had turned off a switch across the mining station. Similar pulses disabled the sensor arrays, communication systems, and even the locks on the slave quarters. The Empire had built their defenses to stop energy weapons and physical attacks, but they had never imagined someone would attack their technology itself. The Zilani slaves were the first to notice something was wrong. The lights that never went out flickered and died. The constant humming of machinery fell silent. The electronic collars that shocked any slave who tried to rest simply stopped working for the first time in centuries. The mining station was quiet. Keth was an old Zilani who had worked in the mines for 60 years. He had been captured as a young warrior when his home world fell to the Empire and had watched thousands of his people die in slavery. When the lights went out, he thought it might be another equipment failure that would be fixed within minutes. But then he heard something he had not heard in decades: the sound of metal doors opening as the locks on the slave quarters failed. Across the complex, thousands of Zilani prisoners were stepping out of their cells for the first time without permission. The guards were running around in confusion, trying to use communication devices that no longer worked. Then the ships appeared, black shapes descending from the sky like pieces of the night itself. They landed in the center of the mining complex, and strange beings emerged wearing armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. These beings moved differently from any species Keth had ever seen, with quick, precise movements that spoke of confidence and purpose. Captain Nam Soyeon removed her helmet, revealing a face that looked almost like a Zilani, except for the darker skin and smaller eyes. She spoke in the Zilani language, using the translation technology that Dr. Lim Yunji had developed. But her words carried emotions that made every slave who heard them feel hope for the first time in years. "We are humans from the planet called Earth," she announced, her voice carrying across the silent complex. "We have come to offer you freedom. The choice is yours. You can remain here as slaves, or you can come with us and help us build something better." The Zilani slaves looked at each other in confusion and fear. They had heard stories of liberators who would come from beyond the stars, but those were just myths told by grandparents to children. These humans were real, and they were offering something that seemed impossible after so many years of suffering. Keth stepped forward, his old legs shaking from years of hard labor. "Who are you?" he asked, "and why should we trust you? Every species that has ever come to this world has brought only pain and slavery." Captain Nam looked directly into his eyes, and Keth felt something he had almost forgotten: compassion from another thinking being. "We are humans," she said, "and we were rejected by the same empire that enslaved you. They told us we were too dangerous to join their galactic community. So we decided to build our own community based on freedom." Instead of fear, she gestured to her soldiers who were already distributing food and medical supplies to the weakest slaves. "We do not want to rule you or use you. We want to give you the choice that was taken from you, the choice to determine your own destiny." The human medics moved through the crowds of freed slaves treating wounds and illnesses that had been ignored for years. They worked with an efficiency that amazed the Zilani, using devices that could heal broken bones in minutes and cure diseases that had plagued the mining station for decades. But more importantly, they treated every slave with respect, asking permission before examining them and explaining what they were doing. Within hours, the mining station had been transformed from a place of suffering into something that looked like hope. The Zilani organized themselves into work groups, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to help prepare defenses for the imperial response that would surely come. The humans shared their advanced weapons and taught the Zilani how to use them, but they also listened to what the former slaves had to say about imperial tactics and weaknesses. The Zilani had spent decades watching their captors, and they knew things about imperial operations that could help the human cause. Then the Empire struck back. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of the star system, led by Admiral HFY, one of the Empire's most feared commanders. His flagship alone was larger than all. 30 human ships combined and carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. The fleet also included troop transports, carrying thousands of Imperial soldiers ready to retake the mining station and execute every freed slave. As an example, Admiral Song received the warning from his scouts and gathered his fleet in the space between the Imperial ships and the planet below. His 30 black ships looked tiny against the hundreds of Imperial vessels, but he had advantages that the enemy did not know about. The battle began when Admiral HFY demanded the immediate surrender of all human forces and the return of Imperial property, meaning the Zilani slaves. When Admiral Song refused, the Imperial fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered thousands of worlds. But the human ships moved like nothing the Empire had ever seen. They twisted and turned through space, avoiding the massive energy beams that could destroy mountains. Their own weapons were smaller but far more precise, targeting the weak points in Imperial ship designs that humans had discovered through careful study. The Zilani fighters that had been hastily trained by human instructors proved to be natural pilots. Their telepathic abilities allowed them to coordinate with each other in ways that confused the Imperial forces. Soon the space around Kepler 442b was filled with the wreckage of Imperial ships. Admiral HFY watched in disbelief as his superior fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy that should have been crushed within minutes. These humans fought with tactics he had never seen, using technology that seemed to anticipate his every move. The final blow came when Captain Nam led a boarding party onto the Imperial flagship itself. The human soldiers moved through the alien corridors like ghosts, appearing and disappearing before the Imperial guards could react. They reached the bridge and captured Admiral HFY without firing a shot. The victory at Kepler 442b sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in millions of years, the Galactic Empire had suffered a major defeat at the hands of a species they had dismissed as primitive. The news spread through underground networks faster than the Empire could suppress it. On dozens of worlds, enslaved species looked up at the stars and wondered if the stories their grandparents had told were coming true. Stories about liberators who would come from the darkness of space to free them from their chains. The age of human liberation had begun. Fleet Admiral Oh Seung-yun stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching as 3,000 Federation ships took their positions around Nexus Prime. The same crystal city that had once rejected humanity now found itself surrounded by the greatest fleet of free beings ever assembled. Ships from 50 different species moved in perfect coordination, their crews united by shared purpose and the translation technology that let them think as one. The Imperial response was overwhelming. 10,000 ships filled the space around the galactic capital, led by Emperor Zorathak's personal dreadnought, a vessel so massive it looked like a small moon. The Emperor had gathered every available ship from across the galaxy, abandoning distant systems to protect the heart of his empire. Admiral O could see the ancient weapons that the Emperor had threatened to use. Planet killers that glowed with deadly energy, reality bombs that warped space around them, and mind-control transmitters that could turn entire populations into slaves. The Empire had brought weapons that could destroy star systems, but Admiral O had something they did not expect: the combined knowledge and determination of every oppressed species in the galaxy. Captain Lee Minho, now promoted to fleet captain, commanded the assault wing that would punch through the Imperial defenses. His ships were crewed by humans and aliens working together in ways the Empire could not understand. Zilani telepaths coordinated with human tacticians, while Gorvani warriors operated weapons designed by Takani engineers. The battle began when Emperor Zorathak himself appeared on all communication channels, his ancient face filled with rage at seeing his perfect empire challenged by beings he considered inferior. Humans and alien scum, he declared, surrender now and I will grant you quick deaths. Continue this rebellion and I will make your species extinct and use your worlds as examples for 1 billion years. Fleet Admiral O responded with calm dignity. Your empire is built on the suffering of innocent beings, and today that suffering ends. We offer you the same choice you once offered us. Join our federation as equals, or face the consequences of your cruelty. The Emperor's response was to activate the planet-killer weapons beams of energy that could crack worlds shot toward the Federation fleet, but they never reached their targets. The electromagnetic pulse devices that Dr. Kim Ji-won had developed disrupted the ancient weapons, turning them into useless metal. The Empire had not improved their technology in millions of years, while the Federation had been innovating for 7 years. The space battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Federation ships moved like a living thing, each vessel knowing exactly where every other ship would be. The combined telepathic abilities of multiple species created a network of minds that could react to threats faster than any computer. Imperial ships tried to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the Federation fleet, but they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move. Zilani mind readers detected Imperial strategies before they were implemented, while human computers calculated the perfect response to every threat. Captain Nam Soyeon led boarding parties onto Imperial ships using stealth technology that made them invisible to every sensor the Empire possessed. Her teams moved through alien corridors like ghosts appearing. Only when they reached critical systems, the Imperial crews found their own ships turning against them as Federation soldiers took control of weapons and engines. The tide of battle turned when the liberated species revealed abilities that the Empire had never known existed. The graceful Silvani, who had been used as servants, could actually manipulate gravity itself, turning Imperial ships into weapons against their own allies. The quiet Mentari, who had worked in Imperial laboratories, could control electronic systems with their minds, shutting down entire fleets without firing a shot. Emperor Zorathak watched his invincible armada crumble before an enemy that fought with tactics he could not comprehend. These beings worked together in ways that his empire, based on fear and domination, could never achieve. Every species contributed their unique abilities to a whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. In desperation, the Emperor activated his final weapon, a device that could destroy Earth itself and end humanity forever. The weapon required him to be close to his target, so he ordered his personal dreadnought to break through the Federation lines and reach the edge of human space. Captain Lee Minho intercepted the Emperor's ship with a small strike force, knowing that this would be the most important battle of his life. The dreadnought was 100 times larger than any Federation ship, but Lee Minho had advantages that size could not overcome. His crew included the best pilots from 20 different species and weapons that had been designed specifically to fight this exact battle. The final confrontation took place inside the Emperor's ship, as Captain Lee Min-ho led a boarding party through corridors that had been built when humanity was still learning to use tools. The Emperor waited in his throne room, surrounded by the artifacts of 1 billion conquered worlds. Emperor Zorathak was ancient, beyond human understanding, but he was also alone. His empire had been built on keeping species separate and afraid of each other. He had never experienced the strength that came from true cooperation and unity. Captain Lee Min-ho entered the throne room, not as a conqueror, but as someone offering a final chance for peace. Surrender now, and you can live out your remaining years in comfort, he said. Your empire is finished, but you do not have to die with it. The Emperor refused to believe that his million-year reign could end at the hands of beings he considered primitive insects. But as Captain Lee Min-ho and his diverse team stood before him, the Emperor finally understood what he had unleashed by rejecting humanity. The humans had not just built a rival empire, they had created a new way for different species to live together. The battle ended not with the Emperor's death but with his surrender. The ancient ruler who had enslaved countless billions finally bowed before representatives of the species he had oppressed. The sight was broadcast across the galaxy, showing every enslaved being that their liberation was finally at hand. With the Emperor's defeat, the Galactic Empire simply collapsed. Systems that had been held together by fear suddenly found themselves free to choose their own destiny. Most chose to join the Terran Federation, which was quickly renamed the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. Park Sora, who had once stood in the council chamber as humanity's rejected ambassador, now stood in the same place as the first elected president of the new federation. The crystal city of Nexus Prime was transformed from a symbol of oppression into a beacon of hope, where representatives from hundreds of species worked together to build a better galaxy. The quarantine barriers that had once trapped humanity around Earth were converted into monuments to freedom. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the system where the liberation had begun, and to learn about the species that had refused to accept that slavery and suffering were the natural order of things. In schools across the galaxy, children from dozens of different species learned together, sharing knowledge and friendship in ways their parents had never imagined. The translation technology that allowed perfect communication between species became as common as breathing, creating bonds between civilizations that could never be broken. The new Federation faced many challenges as worlds that had been enslaved for millions of years learned to govern themselves. Some species had forgotten how to make their own decisions, while others had to overcome centuries of hatred toward their former oppressors. But with human guidance and the cooperation of all member species, these problems were solved through patience and understanding. Rather than force, Dr. Kim Ji-won continued her research, developing new technologies that would allow the Federation to explore beyond the known galaxy. The universe was vast and filled with wonders that no species had yet discovered. Together, the free peoples of the galaxy would venture into the unknown, carrying the message of freedom to whatever civilizations they might find. Among the distant stars, Commander An Jae-hyun established exploration fleets that pushed beyond the boundaries of known space, discovering new worlds and new species that had never known the Empire's oppression. These first contact missions were based on respect and cooperation, rather than conquest, offering friendship and knowledge rather than demanding submission. The story of humanity's rise from rejected primitives to the founders of galactic freedom became legend told on 1,000 worlds to children who would grow up free. The species that had been deemed too violent and unpredictable had proven that sometimes it takes rebels and outcasts to change the universe. Earth remained the capital of the new Federation, but it was no longer alone. Humans worked alongside beings from across the galaxy, building a civilization based on the radical idea that every thinking being deserved dignity, freedom, and the right to determine their own destiny. The galaxy that had once been ruled by fear was now governed by hope, and the future stretched ahead, filled with infinite possibilities for species that had learned to dream together. General Bae Hunjin stood on the observation deck of the new military academy, orbiting Mars, watching as ships from 20 different species practiced battle formations together. The academy had been built in just 6 months, using a combination of human engineering and alien knowledge that the liberated species had brought with them. 3 months had passed since the victory at Kepler 442b, and everything had changed. The news of humanity's triumph had spread across the galaxy faster than the Empire could stop it. Resistance groups that had been hiding in the shadows for centuries suddenly found the courage to fight back. Entire star systems declared independence and asked for human protection. The Academy was General Base answer to the challenge of managing this rapid expansion. Every day new refugees arrived seeking freedom, and every day the Terran Federation grew larger. The humans needed to train not just their own people but beings from dozens of different worlds to work together as one military force. In the main training hall, a group of human cadets practiced alongside Zilani telepaths and massive rock creatures called the Gorvani, who had broken free from Imperial mining operations. The differences between the species were enormous, but they were learning to use those differences as strengths rather than weaknesses. Cadet Park Minsu was practicing with his Zilani partner Vel, who could read thoughts and emotions through touch. At first, Park Minsu had been uncomfortable with someone seeing into his mind, but now he understood how powerful their partnership could be. In battle, Vel could sense enemy intentions before they acted, while Park Minsu could make split-second decisions that saved both their lives. The Gorvani cadets were learning to use human weapons despite their massive stone hands being designed for crushing rocks rather than holding delicate equipment. But their natural armor made them perfect for assault missions where they could absorb enemy fire, while human soldiers flanked the enemy from other directions. General Bay watched the training exercises with pride, but also concern. The Terran Federation was growing too fast, and the Empire was not going to ignore their expansion much longer. Intelligence reports suggested that ancient weapons were being activated across Imperial space, and massive fleets were gathering for a final assault on human territory. Dr. Lim Yunji made another breakthrough that would change everything in her laboratory on Luna. She had been working on improving the translation technology that allowed different species to communicate, but her latest discovery went far beyond simple language conversion. The new devices could share not just words and emotions, but actual memories and experiences. When a human wore the device and touched an alien, they could see the world through alien eyes, understanding their culture, their fears, and their dreams in ways that had never been possible. Before Captain Lee Minho volunteered to test the new technology with Keth, the old Zilani warrior who had become a leader among the freed slaves. When they connected through the device, Lee Minho experienced 60 years of slavery through Keth's memories. He felt the pain of separation from family, the exhaustion of endless labor, and the slow death of hope that came with decades of captivity. But he also felt something else. He experienced the moment when human ships had appeared in the sky like pieces of the night itself, bringing freedom to those who had given up all hope. Keth felt Lee Minho's memories too, seeing Earth through human eyes and understanding the determination that drove humans to risk everything for strangers they had never met. The experience left both beings changed. They were no longer just allies fighting a common enemy. They were friends who truly understood each other. The technology was quickly distributed throughout the Terran Federation, creating bonds between species that were stronger than any treaty or agreement. As more star systems joined the Federation, the humans discovered that each species brought unique abilities that made the alliance stronger. The Zilani could communicate through telepathy, making coordination in battle almost perfect. The Gorvani could survive in environments that would kill other species. The graceful Silvani could move through space without ships, using natural abilities that defied physics. But the most important discovery was that every species had been changed by their time under Imperial rule. They had learned to hide their true abilities and blend into the background to avoid attracting attention. Now free to be themselves, they were proving far more capable than the Empire had ever realized. The liberation of the Altair system brought 30 million refugees to human space and stretched the Federation's resources to their limits. But it also brought the Takani, a species of natural engineers who could build anything, if given the right materials. Working with human scientists, they designed new types of ships that combined the best of all member species technologies. Commander An Jae-hyun led increasingly bold raids deep into Imperial territory using intelligence provided by resistance groups on dozens of worlds. Each successful mission brought more refugees and more intelligence about Imperial weaknesses, but also made the Empire more desperate to stop the human expansion. The breaking point came when the ID Federation liberated the Vega system, which contained one of the Empire's most important shipyards. The facility had been building warships for the Imperial fleet for over 1,000,000 years, and its loss crippled the Empire's ability to replace ships. Destroyed in battles with human forces, Emperor Zorathak himself appeared on galactic broadcasts for the first time in centuries. His ancient face showed the strain of watching his empire crumble as world after world declared independence. The Emperor was older than human civilization and had ruled the galaxy when Earth's dinosaurs still walked the planet. Citizens of the galaxy, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of eons. The human infection has spread too far and threatens the very fabric of our ordered civilization. These primitive beings and their alien puppets seek to destroy millions of years of progress and plunge the galaxy into chaos. The Emperor revealed weapons that had been hidden since the early days of the Empire planet, killers that could turn entire worlds into asteroid fields, reality bombs that could erase star systems from existence, ancient machines that could control the minds of entire populations. But the humans had been preparing for this moment. Dr. Kim Ji-won and her team had not been idle during the Federation's expansion. They had been studying captured Imperial technology and developing countermeasures for every weapon the Empire possessed. The Federation scientists had discovered that the Empire's ancient weapons drew their power from the same energy sources that powered their regular technology. The electromagnetic pulse weapons that had worked so well against Imperial defenses could be scaled up to disable even the most powerful Imperial super weapons. General Bay received reports from his scouts that massive Imperial fleets were gathering in the Nexus system, where the Galactic Council had first rejected humanity's application for membership. The Empire was preparing for what they called the final solution, a campaign to wipe out not just humanity but every species that had joined the Terran Federation. The irony was not lost on the humans. The same council chamber where they had been told they were too violent and primitive would now become the site of the greatest battle in galactic history. The Empire that claimed to represent peace and order was preparing to commit genocide on a scale never before seen. President Yoon Hana called an emergency session of the Federation Council, which now included representatives from over 50 different species. The Great Hall on Earth that had once hosted only human leaders now rang with voices in dozens of languages, all united by the translation technology that allowed perfect communication. "We stand at a crossroads," President Yoon announced, her words automatically translated into every language represented in the chamber. "The Empire has revealed its true nature and shown that it will destroy entire civilizations, rather than allow them to choose freedom." The vote was unanimous. Every species in the Federation agreed to stand together against the Imperial assault. They would gather their combined fleets and meet the Empire at Nexus Prime, where this conflict had begun. The battle would determine whether the galaxy would continue under the rule of ancient tyrants or enter a new age of freedom and cooperation. Admiral Song Tae-young was given command of the largest fleet ever assembled by free beings. Over 3,000 ships representing 50 different species and countless different technologies would follow him into battle against an empire that had ruled the galaxy since before humans learned to use fire, as the Federation fleet prepared to depart. For Nexus Prime, the crews knew they were not just fighting for their own freedom. They were fighting for every enslaved being in the galaxy and for the right of all species to determine their own destiny. The final battle was coming, and the fate of the galaxy would be decided by beings who had been told they were not worthy of joining civilized society. The humans and their allies were about to prove that sometimes the rejected and forgotten could change the universe. Captain Lee Min-ho stood at the viewing window of the human transport ship, watching the massive alien city grow larger before his eyes. The city floated in space like a giant crystal made of pure light, with towers that stretched up into the darkness of space. Each tower was bigger than any building on Earth, and they glowed with colors that humans had no names for. This was Nexus Prime, the heart of the Galactic Empire, where aliens from thousands of worlds came to make decisions that affected entire star systems. Lee Min-ho had dreamed of this moment since he was a child back on Earth, when he first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Now he was here representing all of humanity in their greatest moment. Ambassador Park. Sora walked up beside him, her face calm but her hands shaking slightly. She had spent 20 years preparing for this day, learning alien languages and customs, studying every piece of information Earth had about the Galactic Empire. Today, she would speak for 7 billion humans, and their future depended on her words. The transport ship docked at a platform made of some strange metal that seemed to flow like water, but felt solid under their feet. Alien creatures moved around them in all directions. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, while others crawled or floated through the air. Their skin came in every color Lee Minho could imagine, and some colors he could not. Purple beings with 6 arms walked next to tiny green creatures that looked like living plants. A tall blue alien with 4 eyes approached their group. Its voice came from a device around its neck that translated the alien sounds into human words. "Follow me, humans. The Galactic Council is ready to hear your request." The alien turned and walked away without waiting for a response, its long legs carrying it quickly through the crowd park. Sora and her team followed the alien guide through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The wall showed moving pictures of alien worlds with cities that made Earth look like a small village. They passed rooms where beings from different planets worked together on machines that hummed with power. Lee Minho felt very small and very young, walking through this ancient place. Finally, they reached the council chamber, a huge round room with seats arranged in circles going up to a ceiling so high it disappeared in shadows. Thousands of alien beings sat in those seats, all looking down at the small group of humans in the center. The air felt heavy, and Lee Minho could hear his own heartbeat in the silence. A voice boomed through the chamber, speaking in perfect English, though the speaker looked nothing like a human. It was tall and thin, with skin like gray stone and eyes that glowed red. Council Speaker Vorthak stood at the highest seat, looking down at the humans like they were insects. "Humans of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Empire. State your case and know that we have already studied your species for many years." The voice was cold and showed no emotion. Sora stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. Despite the fear Lee Minho knew she must be feeling. "Honored Council, we come before you as representatives of humanity. We have achieved faster than light travel, explored our local star systems, and made peaceful contact with several alien species. We seek to join the galactic community and contribute to the peace and prosperity of all civilizations." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared showing Earth cities, space stations, and human achievements in science and technology. The humans had cured diseases that had killed millions, built machines that could think, and created art that moved the soul. Sora showed videos of human doctors helping sick people, teachers educating children, and engineers building bridges that connected distant places. "We believe humanity has much to offer the Galaxy Park." Sora continued, "Our species has shown remarkable adaptability, creativity, and a desire for exploration. We have ended wars on our planet, established democratic governments, and reached out to the stars with open hearts and peaceful intentions." The council members whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like music, wind, and grinding stone. Lee Minho watched their faces, trying to read their expressions, but alien emotions were impossible to understand. Some seemed interested, while others looked disgusted or afraid. Council Speaker Vorthak raised one long arm, and the whispering stopped. "We have indeed studied your species, humans, and what we have found disturbs us greatly. You claim to be peaceful, yet your history is filled with violence, war, and destruction. You have fought wars that killed millions of your own kind. You have polluted your planet and driven countless other species to extinction." The holographic displays changed, showing images from human history, battles between nations, weapons that could destroy cities, and environmental damage that had scarred Earth. The humans in the chamber watched in shame as their darkest moments were displayed for all to see. Vorthak continued, his voice growing colder. "You are a young species, only recently achieving space travel. Most of the civilizations represented here have existed for millions of years. We have learned patience, wisdom, and the value of stability. Your species shows none of these qualities. You are aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous. But we have changed," Sora protested, stepping forward. "We have learned from our mistakes. We have established peace on Earth and seek only to explore and learn. We offer friendship and cooperation to all species." The council speaker made a sound that might have been laughter. Humans, you think a few decades of peace erases millions of years of violent evolution? You are predators by nature, and predators cannot be trusted in civilized society. Your very presence would destabilize the careful balance we have maintained. For eons, Lee Min-ho felt anger building in his chest. These aliens who claimed to be so wise and peaceful were judging humanity based on fear and prejudice. They refused to see the good in humans, the potential for growth and change. They saw only what they wanted to see. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every alien in the chamber raised their hand or appendage in agreement. The verdict was clear and brutal. Not only was humanity rejected from joining the Galactic Empire, but they were officially prohibited from any contact with galactic civilization. Council Speaker Vorthak stood again, his red eyes fixed on the human delegation. By the power of this council, I declare the Sol System and all human settlements to be under permanent quarantine. No human ship will be permitted to leave your local space. No alien ship will be permitted to enter your territory. You are cut off from the galaxy until such time as your species learns to control its violent nature. Holographic barriers appeared in the air around the humans, showing the boundaries of their prison. A sphere of energy would surround their entire solar system, trapping them inside like animals in a cage. Trade routes that connected thousands of worlds would bypass human space, entirely leaving Earth isolated and alone as the council members began to leave their seats. Park Sora made one final desperate plea. Please reconsider. We are not the monsters you believe us to be. Give us a chance to prove ourselves. Vorthak paused at the chamber entrance, his voice carrying across the vast room. You will have that chance, human. Within your cage, you may prove that your species can evolve beyond its primitive nature. If you succeed, perhaps in 1,000 years, we will reconsider. If you fail as we expect, you will destroy yourselves and the problem will solve itself. The alien guide appeared again, leading the stunned human delegation back through the corridors that now seemed like a maze designed to confuse and intimidate. Lee Min-ho looked back once at the council chamber where their hopes had been crushed and their future decided by beings who saw them as nothing more than violent children, as their transport ship pulled away from Nexus Prime. Lee Min-ho watched the beautiful crystal city shrink in the distance. He thought about Earth, waiting for news of their acceptance into the galactic community. Instead, they would return with news of rejection, isolation, and a challenge that would test everything humanity believed about itself. The barriers were already forming around their solar system, invisible walls that would keep them trapped, but also keep the galaxy out. Lee Min-ho smiled grimly as he realized something: the aliens had made a mistake. They thought isolation would weaken humanity, but they had never met a species that grew stronger when cornered.